Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Bulbbul is an Indian horror film that came out in 2020. It is currently streaming on Netflix. I've been reviewing Indian films every week, and since it's October, I'm doing all horror movie reviews. It's a very month filled with horror movies, and I'm trying to get into checking out as many Indian horror films as possible, and this movie is one of them. And it's a fun movie. I really did enjoy this movie. Not as much a horror movie necessarily. It definitely has some horrific aspects to it. It does have some like supernatural type of horror. It is a horror movie, but it's also very much kind of like a fantasy movie, kind of like has a mystery to it. Also a bit of a drama. It touches on a few different genres, as it were, while also being a horror movie. And a beautiful film as well. This is written and directed by Anvita Dutt, and a movie that I really did enjoy. It is very similar to Stree. It is a horror movie where the horror aspects of it are the fear of a woman, supernatural woman coming back and killing men. So in Stree, it was a woman stealing. Stree was a witch that would steal men. In this movie, Bulbbul, it is a demon woman that comes and kills men. And it on that level, it doesn't, I guess it would be scary. I mean, they similarities between the two movies, but definitely more of a fantasy movie. But very well shot, amazingly written, amazing acting in this movie as well. And the fantasy aspect, the demon that they're talking about in this movie flies. Her feet are twisted backwards. She dances on the tops of trees. Very kind of like a fantasy type of a story. And it's a story that is told between two kids. This movie starts off with this girl, Bulbbul, the main character of the movie. As a child, she was married off to an older man. And she mistakenly thinks that she's being married off to this younger kid who she kind of bonds with. And he tells her these scary stories. And it's not till later that she finds out that she was actually married off to a much older man. And she was a very young girl. So that kind of idea in itself is somewhat horrific, considering that was a reality of people's lives at some point in time. Not only in India, but, even in the United States. I mean, there's still red states in America that I believe make it okay for older men to marry younger women. We are living in crazy times right now. But it's kind of brutal when you find that out. I mean, it starts off with the ceremony, very gorgeous. And it's definitely a movie that focuses on an aspect of India that is wealthy, right? That they live in lavish mansions and have tons of money. And this girl is married off to this guy who's got tons of money. And he's got a brother. I don't know if it's a twin brother, but definitely around his same age, that seems to have some mental illness. Also, he acts childish, but also still somebody who is a predator to this girl. Calls her doll, kind of flirts with her for a bit, and then shooed away. His wife is brought in to take him away. But just the fact that she's married off to this older guy, and then the young brother is the kid that she kind of bonds with, and he tells her these stories about these demon women, and they grow up kind of telling these stories to each other, and even when they get older, they co-author a book about these stories. So it's this kind of friendship then bond that grows throughout the story, and also kind of a bit of a love story as well. A bit. So, it starts off showing her as a child. She loved to climb trees. There's this scene where she's getting prepared to be married for the ceremony, and they're putting a toe ring on her. And she asks what the toe ring is for, and the woman says that it's to keep little girls to grow up into women to fly away. And then she says, well, it's actually just to control you. Which is, a very interesting aspect to the narrative, the overall narrative of the movie. But also, the movie being about controlling women. But also, the horror aspects of it, as these men turn up murdered, turn up dead, in a time where it's common for any situation like that to be blamed on the demon woman. Like every situation, it's like the go-to explanation for anything that happens. Oh, the demon woman did it. But you see, as the body count increases, that these are all pretty horrible dudes. And this movie will show you the horrors of what it is, what women had to deal with, and how horrible these men could be. So in all, I really love this movie. And it's a movie that makes you think, like, it's a movie where you're questioning if it's based in, like, if this movie is grounded or if there is, like, a fantasy aspect to it. It's like a question you're constantly asking yourself through the events of this movie, where part of you is believing the grounded aspect of this movie, where you can easily explain these things as one character being responsible for it. But then also you can kind of see how maybe another character, if it is more of a supernatural thing, how that character could be responsible for it. And both of these characters could easily be the reasoning, the explanation for why these men are turning up dead, and why each of these characters would have motivation to do those killings, which I found that interesting. How it doesn't really, until the end, you don't know what kind of world we're living in. And even the cinematography, even the different shots of this movie, there's a lot of mist and smog and smoke in this movie that makes it very dreamlike. All of the shots at night have this like red lighting to them, so it's very, very dreamlike. So it's hard to know if this movie is taking place in like a grounded real world or if it is more of a fantasy, which a lot of Indian films tend to ride that line, kind of going between feeling like a historical epic and something that is fantasy. Like Bahubali is a great instance of something that feels like almost like a historical epic, but then these fantasy type moments happen, these flourishes happen within it. And this one has those same kind of fantasy, kind of dreamlike moments, but they're still so well grounded that like you're constantly questioning what you're watching and questioning what's potentially happening, which I love the aesthetic of it. I mean, it's a gorgeous film. And all of it, even the brutality of it, is filmed in a way that's sadly beautiful. But yeah, so this movie has a lot of damaging things, and I'm going to be spoiling this movie, so be warned. If I haven't spoiled, I don't think I've spoiled anything yet, but I will be talking about specifics of this movie that I liked, aspects of the movie that I just feel like I want to talk about. So I will be spoiling this movie. I would recommend it. It is a great movie. It's Bulbbul. It's Bulbbul. It's on Netflix. A great movie. It's a quick movie too, but probably the shortest Indian film I've watched. It's only an hour and 34 minutes. It's great. It's like I love the long Indian films, the 3+ hour Indian films. Those are all great as well, but they're still able to pack the punch in just over 90 minutes, and I absolutely love that aspect of it. So spoilers. And one of the reasons why spoilers, because I want to mention that this movie, I mean, the horrific aspects of it is not only that the kind of child bride aspect of it. The fact that we're dealing with men that are clearly in like their 40s or 50s marrying children that are like, you know, in single digits. You know, they're not even 10 years old yet, and they're being married off to like some wealthy guy. And the wealthy guy, his brother, is clearly a predator to young girls as well. Whether he's mentally disturbed or not, still is a child predator himself. And also, so you're dealing with that kind of abuse. You're also dealing with just sexual abuse anyway, with like rape and things like that happen on later, and just physical abuse too. How physical abuse happens to different female characters in this movie, some of which happen off screen where you're just hearing about it, and some happen in kind of glorious slow motion, which isn't necessarily glorious, but I mean it's like gorgeous. It's like devastatingly gorgeously shot. It like you, it's a visceral feeling when you see one of these characters just get like, it's brutal, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But you know, and then it's like clearly there's the connection between Satya, who's the boy, right, and they grow up. So most of this movie is them as adults, where Satya is older now. He's come back. He studied abroad. He lived abroad, and he came back home after her husband left, right? We don't know why he left, but he left. So she's in this like palace by herself, and the guy that she grew up with, that was like she was bonded to, she thought she was married to, comes back. The one that she had feelings for, and that was the reason why her husband sent him away. He comes back, and you see that he comes back a different person. And there's a moment where she even points that out, where she realized that he's no different from all the other men, because he comes back and he's trying to investigate. He becomes like a Sherlock Holmes of things that are happening, because these men start ending up dead, and he's starting to investigate, and he thinks it's the doctor, because the doctor, Sudeep, I think it's Sudeep, right?
I want to take a quick break from the show to let you all know that there is official merch for the Ray Taylor Show. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com. You can get t-shirts, different artwork available, different designs, all on high quality materials in all the sizes. There's also iPhone cases made of biodegradable material. That's right. This is not bad for the environment. This is good for the environment. So all of those designs that are available on t-shirts are also available on phone cases. Designed by me, sold by me. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com to support the Ray Taylor Show and promote it out in the world, so all of the people in your life can see that you are a fan of the Ray Taylor Show. Now, let's get back to that very show right now.
The doctor is aware of things that are going on. There's a scene where he's talking about the wife of some other wealthy family, and how she quote unquote fell down the stairs. And how that's just kind of the go-to saying for these wealthy families to not take responsibility for the fact that he beats her, right? So the doctor's seeing the reality of all these situations, and Satya starts thinking that it is the doctor who is committing these crimes, right? Because he's the one that knows about them all. And he also is one, because he not only knows, but he also values life. Being a doctor, just seeing how inhuman, how barbaric these men are to these women. You know, it's clear that he wants to protect them, because he's constantly healing them, and he has compassion for them. But then, so he's kind of like, he's the guy that's, Sudeep. He is the guy who is suspected, and so much of this movie you're like, is it him? Like, it could be him, but also you're thinking like, maybe there is this demon woman, because it kind of hints to that. A lot of the things that happen at night with all the mist and the smoke, you're like, maybe it is. Maybe there is this demon woman who has twisted feet and flies through the trees and kills these men. And even after, like, there's the victims start piling up. Like, there's the first victim is the man, the old man who her husband's brother, who's messed up in the head, called her doll when she was a young kid and was trying to do some stuff with her. And then later on, he ends up dead, right? So he's the first victim where they suspect it's the demon woman that killed him, right? So she's dealing with, throughout this movie, her sister-in-law is kind of mourning his death. She shaved her head and she prays all the time. She wears plain clothes. And she assumes the demon woman is the one responsible. And that's where they're talking about, oh, anytime something happens, it's the demon woman. So he's the one first that starts off dead. Then the second victim is this other master who, when we hear the doctor talking about with Bulbbul about his wife falling down the stairs, so he finally, it's these men that have abused women, right? Then there's another victim who the witness was a young girl. So, it's all these men that are clearly, so you can see that it could be the doctor, but you could also see that maybe there is this demon woman. So it's like, constantly making you question who it is. And the doctor knows what's really going on, so it's super easy to suspect him, which that's what Satya does. And then you finally see what happened to Bulbbul's husband. You see why he left. You see why he sent Satya away. Because they're older. They want to write this book together. And her husband sees them. He sees the bond they have, which he doesn't like, obviously, because they are of the same age, and it would be an appropriate thing for them. But, of course, he is the older, disgusting human, so he decides to send Satya away to school, to study. So it's like a good thing for him. And even though there's months for him to before he actually goes, he decides to travel with him to go, quote-unquote, take care of everything. But it's just for him to separate the two of them, to separate Bulbbul from Satya. And then when he comes back, the beating that he puts on her, right? Like he sends him away. He sends basically the love of her life away. And still jealous, still an awful person, decides to take it even farther and to beat her. And it's like this slow motion scene of like him with a metal rod, because he sees she goes to destroy the evidence of their, right? She's like done with it. He left. She's trying to wipe him from her memory, and she burns the book that they wrote together. But one of the pages didn't burn in the fireplace, and her husband sees it. So then he knows. That's like confirmation that they were linked more than he suspected. He already suspected. So he takes the fire poker and just beats, like brutalizes her feet. It is like, first, I don't know, while watching it, I wasn't sure what he was beating, right? It could have been anything. It was clearly her, but like what part of her? Like I thought maybe it was her, the baby making section, which could have easily been, right? It's horrific, whatever it was. But you find out it was her feet, that he was like destroying her feet. Right? Destroys her feet, and then he leaves. He's like, I'll send money, but I'm out. So now she's taken care of by the doctor, right? Who knows what's going on, knows that obviously they used the same excuse, fell down the stairs, knows that it was bullshit, that he did this to her feet. He bandages her up. And then you see, like, it's just adding insult to injury, just piling on the trauma while she's just bandaged up, starting her recovery from this horrific thing that happened to her from her husband. Then his brother comes in while she's sedated and like incapacitated in this bed, and then she gets raped by her brother-in-law, right? Which is just brutal on top of that. And of course, his wife knows, the sister-in-law, who later like shaves her head. She knows, and she's trying to cover it up. Like, there's a scene where she's like constantly going back and forth about, oh, it's so great, you're gonna have all this money, and you're living in wealth now, so it's like you have to put up with some stuff. Like, it's horrific how she kind of just tries to justify the treatment, which I guess you would kind of have to, on some level, justify and like kind of, maybe not justify, but to find a way to step outside of yourself, knowing that that's the reality of these women in this situation, that you have to step outside of yourself and kind of, just to survive mentally, have to kind of find justification in it. In some ways similar to that movie I saw, I'm blanking on the name, of the prostitute, the biopic on the prostitute, Indian film, great film. Kathiawadi, I forget the first name. Bangubai Kathiawadi, I forget. Where she kind of had to separate herself. She created a new identity. And it's similar in some ways to that, where you have to kind of separate yourself from the abuse and the trauma in order to just survive. And it's kind of just, it's demoralizing in a lot of ways for how her sister kind of just doesn't acknowledge the fact that she's married to a guy that's like just this disgusting person, that this family is just these horrific people, right? That's the real horror in this movie, are the men, right? The fact that they get killed is the only justice, right? Those are good those are like when good things happen, right? So it's like, watching this movie, I'm like glad that there is either the doctor or this demon woman killing these guys, because the horror is the men in these situations. Let's take a little break from the show to promote. I have Inspired Disorder Plus. Would you feel good about donating $5 a month to an artist that you want to support? $5 a month is not much, less than a price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. A lot of people would probably say, yeah, Inspired Disorder Plus, people can go, and for $5 a month or $50 for the year, you get access to all of the old podcasts that I've ever done, like 10 different podcasts, hundreds of podcast episodes. You also get access to like special deals. So if you do want to collect my artwork, you get discounts on stuff. Watch this show, binge the full week ad-free for $5 a month. Like, you get benefits for the $5 a month or $50 a year. So it's not like you're just donating $5. There's something, you get something for that. Would you feel good about donating $5 a month to an artist that you want to support? A lot of people would probably say, yeah. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And now let's get back to the show. So you see, then the doctor sees that not only did she just get her feet bashed by her husband, but she also got raped by her husband's brother, her brother-in-law, right? So another justification for why this doctor would know that, one, that would be the first victim, that guy. Like, you could see the doctor going to kill that guy, right, to seek revenge for her, because he cares about her. Not necessarily in a romantic way, but just in a human way. The doctor cares about her. Then you would make sense that the second victim would be this other master, this master dinker, who's a wife beater, having him be the second victim. Then having the fourth victim, or maybe the third victim, be an older guy who had a young girl in there. But you also see that Bulbbul doesn't, like, even though she's in these situations, she doesn't care about wealth, right? All the things that her sister's trying to justify why staying in this situation is okay, why receiving this kind of abuse is okay, having this wealth and having like people of town look up to you as somebody who's wealthy. Like, she doesn't care about any of those things. So when her sister's trying to use those things as justification, they don't mean anything to her. But I love, so there's kind of this point where Satya is convinced as the doctor. He's taking the doctor to go stand trial or whatever. And their carriage stops, like the driver gets killed. And he goes off to hunt, which he's done before in this movie. Satya goes out to hunt this demon woman, right? And sees her shadow in the mist and shoots at her. Of course, doesn't kill her. But there's this great thing where it all comes together in this movie, where you find out that the demon woman is real. You find out that the demon woman is Bulbbul, and that her twisted feet came from the fact that her feet healed in a certain way after her husband destroyed them. How she's able to effortlessly bend them around, right? And she's grew up climbing in trees. So it's kind of fantasy in a way, but also in some ways trying to ground it. Like, this explains the feet thing. This explains why people think she just floats through the trees, because she grew up climbing in the trees and playing in the trees. And there's this just kind of, and these fires start. So when you see the clarity that it's not the doctor, that it's actually Bulbbul, and that she is the demon woman, there's also the moment where Satya realizes what he's done, that he has potentially killed. Where he realizes the demon woman is Bulbbul, right? The woman he loves. That he is like every other man who she said he was. You know? On the side of the abusers, Satya was, trying to put the doctor away, thinking it was the doctor, and thinking that he had done anything wrong, right? He is the one, it's vigilante justice, but it's justice none the same. All these abusers are getting their sentence, you know, they're getting killed. But the moment where he realizes what he's done, it's just like, it's cathartic in a way of like, yeah, you did turn into everything that she was right. It's just that whole moment where everything gets answered and comes together was so powerful. I really did enjoy that. And you see how, like, it takes you through how she went through. She would bite their necks open to make them bleed out, and, you know, showing all the different men. Like, watching the movie, I thought it was her, but they did such a good job of making that doctor just as culpable, like just as potentially the person who's doing it. But then realizing when it is her, it's great. You know, it's so great. Just the end is so beautiful. And the very end of it, where like her husband comes back to town and it's all overgrown, everybody left, right? Because it's just like, you know, nobody wanted to live there anymore after what happened. Everything burned, all this shit. It's just it's just like a house where tragedy happened. All of these tragic things happened. So they all leave, and he comes back, and it's all overgrown, you know, and he's got the letter from Satya, who's, you know, telling him what happened. And then seeing the kind of the moment where the movie turns into like supernatural, where everything else, even like with the turned feet and all that stuff, was still based in reality and on some level. Her floating through the trees, it's just her ability to climb really well. But the very end, where it's supernatural and she kind of materializes in front of him, is pretty great. Like, it made me excited for another movie, right? This being the prequel, this being the origin story for this demon woman. Well, I don't think she had a name like Stree from the other movie. Like her name was Bulbbul, but you know the thing, the demon woman everybody was scared of, didn't have a name. They just called her Demon Woman. So if this were a setup to a sequel, I'd be stoked, right? I love that. And it's like there's a lot of horror movies where the monster in the movie are killing bad people, right? It's like the movie Sleepaway Camp. Aside from the very end of the movie, like all of the people in that movie are like child predators that get killed. So it's like you're rooting for the bad, quote unquote, bad guy in the movie. You're rooting for the monster. In this movie, you're rooting for these guys to get killed, right? I don't have any compassion for the fact that, you know, her brother-in-law got killed, knowing what he tried to do when she was a kid, knowing what he did when she was, you know, an adult injured in bed trying to heal, knowing what the other guy did, these other men. It's like it's all justified in my opinion, you know? Which I enjoy those horror movies, right? It's like it's almost like a superhero movie in a way, right? Vigilante justice, doing good, righting wrongs. In a way. I liked it. I really did enjoy it. The aesthetic of it's great. The story's great. And I hope it's the beginning of a franchise. I mean, there's a lot of franchises in Indian films I'm seeing. Like, they love doing the sequels. So, maybe not as many, but and they're so good, too. So, if there is a Bulbbul 2, I would be excited to watch it, for sure. But I'd check it out this Halloween, this October. Check out Bulbbul on Netflix.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.